You mean, let's say the Lions have, because the Rams pick is 2.
Yep.
And with that second pick, just for sake of argument, they take Will Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
So Jalen Carter is available at 3, and the Lions have the 15th pick.
Yep.
What would it take to move from 15 to 3?
I just did a quick Google search on a comp.
I love this.
I knew you would.
Yeah.
This
is something I've thought about, by the way.
Okay. So you talk about making a major influx of young talent on the defensive line, and you go get...
I just got to back away a little bit. Hang on. I'm getting flushed.
You like this?
I really like this. Are you kidding me? Okay. All right. Try
Well,
not
the
to smile
question
too
is,
much.
what does it cost?
Yeah. Well, then you guys start looking. Like, do you have Tankathon or anything out there right now? Does a team picking at 3, does it look like they're definitely going to take a quarterback? Because you may not have to move all the way up to 3, but I get you.
We don't know. I mean,
Let's say you do. Just for, I guess I derailed.
It's going to be Seattle or Philly. Philly's not taking a quarterback. Seattle might.
They might, but boy, I wouldn't with Geno Smith.
Could be Carolina.
Carolina would.
Chicago won't.
Nope.
If it turns out being Chicago, Houston might. But anyway, so the closest comp that I could find just with a quick Google search of going from, mid-teens to the top of the draft, ironically, was a move made by the Los Angeles Rams to trade up to select Jared Goff.
That is ironic.
And back in 2016, the Rams were at 15 and they traded up to number 1. And they gave up 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds. So you'd have to give up the pick at 15, your first next year, probably both of your seconds this year because they have 2 seconds, remember, your third rounder this year and your third rounder next year. Which would take your draft capital, your future draft capital, way down. Way down. Right?
It would. Yeah, it would.
Here's what you would be left with. This year, you would move up and have the 2 picks at the top of the draft, the Rams pick and the one you traded for.
Uh-huh.
You would have no second rounder, no third rounder, a fifth and 2 sixths. Okay?
Unless you were to split up the second round, go 1 this year and 1 next year.
I would imagine a team doing this would want them both. Then next year, you'd have no first. You'd have a second, no third. Although they got the Vikings pick next year in the third round. So you'd have no first. You'd have your second, 1 of the thirds, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh. And
right.
you'd end up with Jalen Carter and Will Anderson.
It's interesting. I have the drafttech.com draft chart value chart that I've been using for the last couple of years. The pick at 3 is valued at 2,200 points.
Mm-hmm.
The pick at 15 is valued at 1,050 points. Mm-hmm. So roughly, 1,100, 1,200 points difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an awful lot of making up there. That's been given up. The 2 second-round picks the Lions have are valued right now at a combined $780. The third-round pick they have, you add in there, it's another $220. So that's 1,000 points right there. And then you're talking about another first-round pick next year.
Yep, and a third-rounder next year.
Yeah, that's expensive. I don't know if that would be.
I would imagine it would be expensive.
Yeah, it would be expensive, but I don't know if it would be that expensive. And like, if I could get away with giving them the 15th pick this year, next year's first, and 1 of the seconds, I would do it. But if you're talking,
you wouldn't do it for the price that it would actually cost.
Well, in your comp, no.
Yeah, well, with what it costs, something very close to that.
Because what I could do is take whichever one of those 2 players I really like. Let's say it's Jalen Carter. Take Jalen Carter at 2 or 3, whatever they land up at. And then with my second first-round pick, I just say, all right, I'm going to take the best defensive back or best linebacker available, whichever one makes more sense. And I'm going to get a good player either way.
Yeah, I'm
very enticed by.
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Like the one thing about trade offers is, and trying to create what a trade would be, I just tried to find a very close comp. You might get away with not giving up next year's third or something, but because it was 15-1, and we're talking about 15-3, that was the 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. But it's going to be really, really expensive, and it should hurt. Like if we make this too easy, then everybody does it,
right.
and the team that's making the trade is getting rooked. So it should be very, very costly. With that said, I wouldn't do it because I like all the draft capital. And if I look at the teams historically that do the best, and I always cite New England and Seattle and Detroit, or not Detroit, New England, Seattle, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, those are teams that are hoarding draft picks, not thinning out their pool of draft picks.
No way I'd do this. And unless it was for some, like if you're a big, Bryce Young fan and you fell to 3 or 2, and you wanted the 2, then I'd think about that for sure.
A quarterback.
Yeah, for a quarterback I would, but not for and I like Will Anderson a lot, I like Jalen Carter a lot. I would not do it for those. One of the greatest feelings I had watching the game Sunday with the Lions versus Jags was they always announce the starters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they put up a graphic of and a picture and what year they are. And I saw a lot of rookies on that Lions defense, and I loved it. And these weren't just rookies. These are rookies making contributions. So on the line, you got Hutch, Pascal, 2 rookies right off the bat. Then you go to linebackers, Rodriguez, rookie. Then you go to secondary, Kirby Joseph, rookie. These are legit pieces that they've drafted throughout the entire draft, from round 1 to round 6, right? You know what? Brad Holmes, give him more picks. I don't need to move. Like I said, unless it was like a quarterback, which is franchise changing, you stay where you're at and you keep all those picks, man. Doug, I know you love picks,
Yeah, and here's the other thing about Brad Holmes, right? He made a name for himself as scouting director on a team that killed it rounds 2 through 7. I mean, the Rams really did a great job because they didn't have first-round picks, and they were still finding Jordan Fullers and Cooper Kupps of the world, right? Brad Holmes is more likely to trade one of these first-round picks for a player, an established player, than he is likely to trade it for more draft picks.
Yes, and I would agree with that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he wouldn't trade those picks to move up and get a player he thinks is going to be that good too.
Like he did with Jameson Williams.
Yeah.
I mean, he moved up for Jameson Williams. He learned a lot from the Rams about acquiring known commodities, right? Talent right now. But he's in a different situation with the Lions. The Rams are in a win-now situation. The Lions are a win-in hopefully next year. So, I like being aggressive. It just depends on the price and the position. And for me, that's too much for that.